He was a legend, a master of late-night television, a man whose sharp wit and quick humor made him untouchable in the world of comedy. Johnny Carson wasn't just any talk show host. He was the host, the gatekeeper of fame and fortune. For 3 decades, Carson's Tonight Show was the gold standard, the place where dreams were made and careers were launched. But while Johnny Carson could make you a star, he could just as easily make you vanish from the limelight with a single snap of his fingers. Cross him, and you'd find yourself permanently locked out of late night's most coveted stage. In this video, we're going to unravel the stories of those celebrities who faced the cold shoulder of Carson's wrath. From deep betrayals to petty squabbles and legendary feuds, these are the stars who were banned by Johnny Carson himself. Buckle up, because this list is longer than you might think. 1. Joan Rivers, the protege who became the rival. Joan Rivers was not just another guest on The Tonight Show. She was Carson's protege, the comedian he helped mold into a star. For over 2 decades, Rivers was a regular on the show, often filling in as a guest host and bringing her sharp, acerbic wit to Carson's stage. But in 1986, the unthinkable happened. Rivers accepted an offer to host her own late-night show on Fox, putting her in direct competition with Carson. Johnny felt utterly betrayed, not just by her decision, but by the way she went about it. He believed she owed him a personal conversation, but instead, he found out through the grapevine. Carson, known for his long memory and even longer grudges, made sure that Joan Rivers was never welcomed back on The Tonight Show again. Their friendship was shattered, and despite Rivers' repeated attempts to make amends over the years, Carson refused to ever speak to her again. 2. Bob Hope, the legend who lost his laughter. Bob Hope, one of the most revered comedians in Hollywood, might seem like an unlikely candidate for Johnny's blacklist. But despite Hope's legendary status, there was one thing Johnny couldn't stand: predictability. Hope's jokes, although once groundbreaking, started to feel rehearsed and outdated to Carson, whose comedic style thrived on spontaneity and improvisation. To Johnny, Hope's appearances on The Tonight Show were more like performances in a play than authentic, engaging conversations. Over time, Carson grew increasingly frustrated with Hope's rigid style, and their relationship cooled. Though there was never a dramatic confrontation, Bob Hope's invitations to the show quietly dried up, as Carson slowly phased out his appearances. 3. Wayne Newton, the feud that boiled over. Wayne Newton and Johnny Carson's feud was as public as it was personal. What started as a series of seemingly light-hearted jokes from Carson about Newton's image and career soon turned into something much more serious. Newton was known to have a short fuse, and he didn't take kindly to being the butt of Johnny's jokes night after night. Eventually, he confronted Carson off camera, an encounter that, by all accounts, was intense and confrontational. Newton accused Carson of taking low blows at his expense, and when Carson didn't back down, their relationship reached a point of no return. Carson, not one to forgive or forget, made sure Newton was effectively banned from the show. The feud between these two larger-than-life personalities lasted for decades, with Newton openly criticizing Carson long after his retirement. 4. Rich Little, upstaged by his own talent. Rich Little was a brilliant impressionist who could mimic almost anyone in Hollywood, including Johnny Carson. At first, Carson seemed to appreciate Little's spot-on impressions, even laughing along when Little mimicked his signature moves. But as the laughs grew louder and the audience's reaction became more enthusiastic, Johnny's amusement began to fade. The truth was, Carson didn't enjoy being upstaged on his own show, and Little's impersonation hit a little too close to home. In a world where Carson's ego and control were paramount, there wasn't room for a guest who could rival his charisma. Over time, Little found his invites to The Tonight Show mysteriously drying up, his once warm reception replaced by an icy silence. 5. Lola Fana, A performance gone wrong. Lola Fana was a singer, dancer, and actress whose energy and charisma captivated audiences across the nation. But her fate on The Tonight Show took a sharp turn during a live performance that, according to some accounts, didn't sit well with Carson. Lola's act was bold, dynamic, and perhaps too provocative for the times, clashing with the more conservative tone that Carson preferred for his show. Although the exact reasons remain a bit murky, one thing is clear: Carson never invited her back. It was a decision that seemed to come out of nowhere, but for Johnny, maintaining the image and decorum of The Tonight Show was more important than any individual guest. 6. Sandra Bernhard, too edgy for late night. Sandra Bernhard was always known for her raw and unfiltered comedic style, never shying away from controversy. When she appeared on The Tonight Show, her edgy humor and unapologetic demeanor didn't quite fit the traditional mold that Johnny had built over the years. Carson, who valued a particular brand of charm and class in his guests, found Bernhard's antics a little too offbeat and unpredictable. After one particularly raucous appearance, where her jokes pushed the envelope further than Carson was comfortable with, she found herself effectively banned from the show. For Bernhard, it was just another notch on her belt of boundary-pushing moments. But for Carson, it was a step too far. 7. Shelly Winters, Waterworks on live TV. Shelly Winters, known for her fiery personality, was a guest on The Tonight Show several times before her unpredictable behavior finally led to her ban. During one memorable appearance, Winters got into a heated argument with Johnny, which ended with her tossing a glass of water at him in jest. While it might have been intended as a joke, Carson wasn't laughing. He didn't appreciate the lack of control and the break in the show's format. From that moment on, Winters was persona non grata, her over-the-top antics sealing her fate with Carson's silent disapproval. 8. Chevy Chase, the rival who never had a chance. Chevy Chase's sarcastic wit and abrasive humor put him at odds with many in Hollywood, but his rivalry with Johnny Carson was particularly icy. When Chase launched his own late-night show, it was seen as a direct challenge to Carson's reign. Even before this, their on-air chemistry was awkward at best, with Chase's brand of humor often clashing with Carson's style. The competition only deepened the rift, and despite Chase's attempts to downplay their rivalry, Carson's disdain was obvious. The door to The Tonight Show was permanently closed to Chevy Chase, as Carson was never one to entertain rivals lightly. 9. Howard Stern, the shock jock. Carson couldn't tolerate. Howard Stern's outrageous and often controversial style was bound to rub Carson the wrong way. Stern's tendency to shock and push the boundaries of good taste was in direct conflict with Johnny's more polished and controlled approach. Carson, who had a keen sense of the limits of late-night TV, didn't appreciate Stern's unpredictable nature and off-color humor. As much as Carson valued spontaneity, he also demanded a level of respect and decorum that Stern simply wasn't interested in providing. Their styles were like oil and water, and Carson made sure Stern would never have a platform on his stage. 10. Paul Lynde, humor that crossed the line. Paul Lynde was one of the wittiest and most flamboyant entertainers of his time, known for his biting humor and often risque jokes. During a Tonight Show appearance, Lynde made a comment that crossed the line, even by the looser standards of late-night comedy. Carson, who valued subtlety and innuendo over crudeness, didn't take kindly to Lynde's off-color joke. After that incident, Lynde's appearances on The Tonight Show were reduced to zero, with Johnny making it clear that his brand of humor was no longer welcome. 11. Harry Bellafonte, the political firestorm. Harry Belafonte's activism was a central part of his identity, but his outspoken political views created tension on The Tonight Show. During a particularly intense conversation about civil rights, Bellafonte's passionate remarks seemed to clash with Carson's more apolitical stance. Johnny, who liked to keep his show light and entertaining, didn't want to alienate his audience with heavy political debates. Although there was no official ban, Bellafonte's appearances became noticeably scarce after that night, marking the unspoken end of his relationship with the show. 12. Jerry Lewis, the star who fell out of favor. Jerry Lewis's legendary status in comedy couldn't save him from falling out of favor with Carson. The two had a complicated relationship, with Lewis's brash personality often clashing with Johnny's understated style. Over time, their interactions became more strained, and Johnny grew tired of Lewis's over-the-top antics and dominating presence. Lewis was quietly but effectively phased out of The Tonight Show lineup, his once frequent appearances dwindling to nothing as Carson's silent ban took hold. Typically, Carson's bans were unspoken and unofficial, but the message was clear. Cross Johnny or go against his wishes, and you'd find yourself on the outs with one of the most powerful figures in late-night TV. While some of these guests may have been banned from The Tonight Show for specific incidents or disagreements, it's important to remember that Carson was known for being a fair and kind host. His decisions were often based on maintaining the overall tone and image of his show rather than personal grudges. Despite these bans, many of the guests on this list still hold a place in entertainment history and have left an indelible mark on late-night TV. And while they may not have been able to return to The Tonight Show stage, their legacies continue to live on through their contributions to comedy and entertainment as a whole. If you enjoy watching this video, please support this channel by giving a like or maybe even subscribing to stay updated on future content. Until next time, stay curious and live happily.